Okay, this one is about the nature of self-abandonment. Oh man, this is one I've struggled with for a very, very long time. Now, for as long as I can remember. And I've been witnessing it in my own life and in the people around me. And, I just want to share my perspective on it because it's a coping mechanism that we all use from time to time. And what's interesting about self-abandonment, the nature of it, is that it's how we dissociate from our power. And, the reason for it is quite simple, but my hope is that when I share my perspective on it and how I experience it, it may illuminate something for you, and that you're able to recognize it, understand it, and therefore, move into a space where you're able to claim your truth, and which is what your power is. And a lot of spiritual people throw around this term, claim your truth, live your truth, be your truth. And I notice there's so much confusion around what that even means. And it's almost become a cliche. And I've certainly heard people talking about it in certain ways, and it kind of makes my skin crawl a little bit, because if people really understood the power of their personal truth, they would never corrupt it. So my perspective, so let's say, for me, if you've listened to this podcast before, you understand the nature of the topics that I talk about. You can probably notice that a lot of them are very challenging to perspectives that most people hold. And the nature of the topics can be triggering to people. And when you examine that and you look at it, what that means is that it's my personal truth that is triggering people, that is evoking inner conflict within them. And, part of the reason I set up this podcast in the first place is so I could just express myself freely without worrying about whether what I'm going to say is going to trigger someone else. Which was my experience, is that my perspective is I'm just always, not always, but very often triggering people. And it got to the point where I've shared this in other podcasts, but I regard myself, the closest label for me in terms of my, my preferences for romantic relationships is that I'm solo polyamorous. And it still doesn't fit me, I don't believe there really are any labels that can fit someone entirely, but it best explains me in that my perspective on intimacy and romantic relationships is that if my nature arises in the moment and wants to express intimacy, then I always want to allow myself to express it. And so I view all of my romantic connections and intimate connections like they're platonic friendships. So I'm not someone who has a desire to build a life with another human being and reserve those emotions for just one person. But that said, I also respect other people's choices to be in committed relationships where they do choose to keep the nature of those emotions for each other. And I totally get it, totally understand. Nonetheless, my perspective triggers people around me and my friends, and it's so I can't really talk about it with anyone unless they are similar to me in their perspective without triggering them, because my personal truth is polarized to the personal truth of someone that wants to, commit to one other person wholly. And so what that means is that my personal truth can create an experience of conflict. And it's uncomfortable. You don't want to create conflict with your friends. You want to have a laugh and a joke with them. You want to have fun with them. You want to talk about topics where you have a shared perspective and a common interest. And, with my best friends, of course, I can do that. Nonetheless, I still have these perspectives, and I still have views that I want to share. And, the podcast helps me because I can just verbalize these perspectives and it doesn't matter. But the truth is that it enables me to avoid any potential conflict because I don't know who's listening. It could still be triggering a whole bunch of people, but I'm just not aware of it anymore. So you can see that this, the desire to avoid evoking conflict within people is huge. We're always trying to avoid conflict, but here's the thing about conflict: when you express your truth and it triggers someone, it's not conflict between you and them. Actually, it's evoking an inner conflict they have within themselves, and the reason why they experience this inner conflict is because they can feel the truth of what you're saying. And there's a part of them that knows that it is true to them at some level. However, there's a part of them also that is holding on to the old perspective. And so it's the truth of the new perspective. It's so challenging to the old perspective because of what it would mean to accept that truth. So let's say I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine and they've been married for quite a while. They've had challenges and, there may have been some straying, an affair or something like that. They've considered divorce, but they're still working at it and all that kind of stuff. And this is a common theme, of course. As we know, most marriages don't last, and then I share my perspective that not only, rings true to them, but makes a lot of sense and, would explain some of the reasons why, if you place this perspective of polyamory, for example, of a solo polyamorist into their scenario, and both of those people accepted that perspective, you would have no conflict whatsoever. Just the feelings of insecurity and jealousy. If the partner was to express those emotions and intimacy with other people. So this is the reason why we actually avoid sharing our truth, is because the truth of it can be too challenging to people who may agree at some level, but not be ready to reconcile that with the part of them that is totally polarized. And this is the thing about human beings, is we're capable of holding both views. We're capable of accepting the truth of accepting someone's truth as our own, as well as holding on to the opposing perspective that is totally against it. And this is what conflict is. It's inner. It's inside us. It's not between the person who shared their truth and us. But the reason why it becomes conflict between two individuals is because the person cannot, the part of the person who is in resistance to that truth is so opposed to it that it's rejected entirely and then projected back onto that other person. And so if that truth is causing pain to that person, if the truth you've expressed is causing pain to that person, and even could be seen as a source of suffering, all of a sudden you've got a desire within someone to eliminate the source of that suffering. And so they'll attempt to diminish, convince otherwise, negate your perspective, make you small, try and try to eradicate you so that they don't have to feel that pain and potential suffering. And if you look at conflict on the planet, and you can look at this from, minor conflict to major conflict, with war and all that kind of stuff, it's the same thing. They're trying to eradicate the source of their suffering, because the reality is there is an aspect of the truth of the conflicted parties that rings true to the opposing sides, but the acceptance of that perspective is too challenging to the other part of them that would have to, and all of the changes, the consequences of accepting that truth. And so even, mercy can become involved if the conflict is a continual source of suffering. Because all of us, whether it's self-mercy or mercy for another person, it's our nature to eradicate suffering. And that the nature of mercy will eradicate suffering at any cost, murder, killing, extermination, annihilation. Mercy is, one of the most powerful forces in existence. And, it's important to understand that, especially with the nature of conflict. So what does that mean? So for someone who says, and many, many people have this perspective, that you should share your truth and express your truth no matter what. No matter what, you should never hold back your truth. You should always be authentic. And what I would say to that is extremely short-sighted. That is extremely short-sighted. Because you have to be aware of other people's nature arising. You have to be aware of the nature of conflict. You have to be aware of the potential consequences of you expressing that truth. And so only a fool would walk into an environment and just express their truth and potentially face being killed or eradicated. It's foolish. The greatest part of you wants you to become more and realize higher potentials of who and what you can become. And you can't do that if you don't exist anymore. You can't do that if you sacrifice yourself in the name of some principle. Foolish. Now, how do you navigate this? So for me, I have a podcast. I can just share my perspective, and it may trigger people, but they probably won't see me as the source of their suffering. They just see someone who has a perspective and they hear someone who has a perspective that's entirely different to theirs, that triggers them when they listen to it. But they're not going to perceive me as the source of their suffering because I'm just sharing myself. And that's part of the key to this, is to make sure, is to just share yourself, just express your truth. Never seek to invalidate someone's perspective. And never try and express yourself holding the desire for the other person to change. Never. Never try to heal anyone. Never suggest that they need to heal. Never try and fix another human being because they are not broken. And what you have to understand is that the only, healing is total bullshit. It's total bullshit. There's no such thing as healing. There's no such thing. There is only separation that causes pain. That's it. That's it. So the healing that everyone's seeking is purely the embracing and the allowing and the reclaiming of parts of ourself that we're pushing away. It's like when you break an arm or break a leg. What's causing the pain? The bone has been separated from itself. So what do? We bring it back together so that it can re-knit and become whole. That's it. It's the only reason pain exists. Let's say you cut yourself, you cut your arm. And so there's a wound, and you can see the wound, it's open. What's happened? The flesh is separated. And so what do? You get stitches, and those stitches pull the wound together so it can become whole again. Separation is the source of all pain. Pain does not come from anywhere other than separation from self. And so this is why it's so important to never ever invalidate someone's perspective, to never ever suggest that someone needs to adopt your perspective, to never ever try and convince anyone of anything. You only express your truth. This is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. And that's it. That's it. Because if you do bring the energy in of trying to heal someone or trying to fix them, the part of them or the parts of them that are inwardly conflicted, the opposing part of them that is separated from the other part within them will feel so oppressed by you trying to tell it to change, trying to convince it to change, trying to invalidate its perspective. Because remember, their pain is only caused by inner separation of perspectives. And here's your energy trying to convince them of your perspective, and that is an oppressive force. You're just perpetrating the separation. You're creating more distance between the part of them that is opposed and the part of them you're trying to get them to believe. So you're having the opposite effect of what you actually want. Because you're giving energy to the part of them, that you're giving energy to the aspect of them that is opposite to the part of them that's resisting that perspective. You're making it worse. And so this will trigger in people. They'll just leave your life. They'll run away. They'll freeze. There's lots of different responses to this kind of, because it's like a force that's trying to oppress and to, and it's causing pain and suffering because it's creating more and more separation. And so they'll lash out, try and shatter the energy. They'll just run away. They'll just leave you and abandon you. So remember, this is about abandonment. They'll just abandon you completely. But at the very least, you have to understand that the nature of this is repellent. It's totally repellent. And so you're repelling them. They won't come closer to you. You're creating more and more distance between you and them. And, this is difficult because, if I share one of my perspectives on this podcast and it triggers you, that will still repel you. I'm not trying to fix you or change you. I'm just sharing my perspective, but it's still repellent if you get triggered because you're because it's challenging that part of you that disagrees and that is opposed. And if you have two perspectives within you that are opposed and disagree, then that's painful because they're separate. And the problem is their perspective is on the same linear. It's part of the same thing. They're varying degrees of, one thing. And so, they're inherently linked, but that separation, it's like a bone. When it breaks, the further apart that break is being pushed, the more painful it is. It's the same with those polarized perspectives. They are varying degrees of the same thing, like a bone. So imagine it in a linear way. And imagine in the middle of those perspectives is a break, right in the middle. And so by trying to convince the other one of its perspectives, you're forcing them further and further apart, and so they become more and more painful. But what's the solution? If the solution to the broken bone is to bring the separate parts closer together so they can re-knit and become whole again, then you have to bring the polarized perspectives closer together, and that only comes through acceptance and understanding. That I'm going to allow you to be polarized, and I'm going to allow you to be polarized. And I'm going to seek to understand you. And that understanding dissolves resistance. It brings it closer. And I'm going to take responsibility for understanding your perspective even better. Now the separate parts of the bone are touching, and the mending and the healing can begin. And once I've accepted and understood your perspective wholly and completely, and you've understood and accepted my perspective wholly and completely, I'm no longer resisting you. I now realize that you're not a threat to me, and you realize I'm not a threat to you. I'm just different. I'm just a varying degree of the same thing. And so the bone becomes whole and mended and even stronger than it was before. So that's it. That's it. And this is why I talk about teachers a lot, especially spiritual teachers. And I know that there are some spiritual teachers that have listened to to my podcast, and it has triggered them. And because what I'm saying is, stop teaching. Just stop it. Stop trying to convince someone of your perspective. You're pushing them away. Stop trying to convince someone of the truth, because all that matters is their truth. Just share yourselves. What's your perspective? Like the way that I am now, I'm not trying to tell you to change. I'm not trying to tell you the truth. I shared with you how I avoid conflict, how I withhold my truth, how I abandon myself and my truth. I'm not trying to teach you how to do it the right way. I'm just sharing my perspective. And my hope is that if this does trigger you, if you do regard yourself as a teacher, especially a spiritual teacher, that if you are triggered by this message, that it doesn't repel you, it doesn't cause you to want to push back on it. That the awareness of it is enough for you to go within yourself to reconcile the opposing aspects within you. But again, it's my hope. I'm allowed to have a hope, but I still accept you wholly, exactly as you are. I understand you. You don't need to change. There's nothing you need to do in order for me to accept you. I just do. And in truth, I know that part of the reason that this podcast exists is because I want to bring you closer to me. Just to be here for you. Because I know you're at the leading edge. I know you're at the bleeding edge. I know that you've experienced more than most. I know that what you would consider your healing journey has enabled you to access profound levels and states of self-awareness that you know that can be beneficial to lots of other people, and I know that as well. And so really I want to just be here for you, just to share my perspective as someone that has also been on that journey and still is, and really wants you to just be totally equipped to do the work that you're doing, and that is evolving into a true leader who leads by example, who shares themselves and portrays themselves as of the people rather than above them. Because the true leaders of tomorrow are people who are going to demonstrate how to be in the world and will inspire others to come with them. They will not be trying to invalidate people's perspectives and trying to get them to change and trying to convince them to follow them. Those teachers will fall away, and they will that method of teaching will implode. It's like a house of cards. It can't exist in the energy we're moving into. And I won't go into the details of that, but anyone that claims their truth to be the truth and is trying to convince the world of that truth, they'll fall from a great height, and that it won't be pleasant when they land. And so I know that those people, they have value and they have merit, and that they have huge untapped potential. And I really don't want them to fall. And so this is, a huge reason why this podcast exists. And, I'm about to, when I began this podcast, I wanted to just express myself without triggering people. I wanted to create an outlet for me to express myself where I didn't have to hold myself back, where I could be as intimate as I wanted to be, and just be totally free to follow my own inspiration and just express it in the way that's most authentic to me. What I'm becoming aware of now is that it is evolving, and when you set up these podcasts, you can see where people are listening, what parts of the world, and you can see that there are people that are resonating with it, and some of them are just devouring the content, and listening to the same ones over and over, and you begin to realize that you're having influence, you're influencing people, and you become aware that you want to wield that influence responsibly, but also make the most of it so that you can create an impact in the world, so that you can create the space for people to expose themselves to potentials to bring deeper and deeper levels of self-awareness to themselves. And so what I'm toying with is, putting up a page. I'm going to put up a page on this website, on the Kernel website, that's solely established for people who would regard themselves, they may not call themselves a spiritual teacher, but people who are at the bleeding edge of the self-awareness movement, in any specific way. They don't have to have a huge following, but they're people who are aware that this is what they want to dedicate their lives to, is bringing self-awareness to the masses, but kind of feel alone and isolated, and feel like their perspectives are different to everyone else. Is kind of similar to me, and I just want to be a sounding board for those people, and to let them know that whatever they believe is true, and is okay and is totally valid. And, just be the wind beneath their wings in some way. So this is going to evolve. I actually do a similar thing in business for entrepreneurs. And, one of the things I offer is just a sounding board, being a sounding board, and all they do is send me recorded audios with their thoughts and ideas. And, I use my gifts to, utilize my vision, my inner vision, and share with them what I see as the highest potential for that thought and idea. Identify potential obstacles and barriers, and just leave a breadcrumb that could inspire them to go in the right direction based on my own experiences. And I don't see any reason why I can't bring that into this kind of thing. If there are evolutionary thinkers that are listening to these podcasts, you could even be a scientist, you could even be an inventor, someone whose perspectives or creations have the potential to really challenge society and the people in society in a way where it could create conflict of some kind. These are really the people I want to invite in and to, I kind of imagine there being a scenario that at some point where we can all share our perspectives, because I'm involved in projects that are potentially challenging and could create potential conflict as well. And I just imagine us all being, it's like if this wasn't virtual, we'd all just be sitting at a table almost like a think tank, and just sharing and just coming together, coming closer. All these aberrant perspectives, wildly creative and but challenging to the accepted norm, and all just accepting each other and appreciating each other and nurturing and nourishing each other. So I'm sure you get the gist. So I'll have a page up on my website at some point to make it as easy as possible for us to engage together. But in the meantime, if you listen to this and it inspires you, just flick us an email. Just flick an email to the team saying, you heard this podcast and you want to get involved in, just call it the think tank, or you want to work with me as a sounding board, or, just whatever arises, and we'll take it from there. So, this turned out to be a bit different than what I expected, but all I want to say is that it's normal to want to temper your truth if it's potentially could threaten someone who may want to eradicate the source of that pain due to your perspective. It's totally okay. It's not a coward's way out. It's actually a smart thing to do, is to temper your truth. It's smart because you want this truth to emerge in a way where it's embraced and carried forward. But you probably need an outlet for it, in the same way that I do. But I think we need to come together now, people who think like this and people who know that they have potentially disruptive ideas, thoughts, creations. And, how can we come together and create that space for each other to just be who we are, be as aberrant as we are, and express express our full genius is the reality of it, to allow it to be shown in a way where it's totally accepted. In fact, radically accepted and encouraged. So that's it. One thing I will say is, if you find yourself abandoning your truth, so the reason why we abandon our truth is because we think we may come into conflict with someone. So it's a protection mechanism. And this can manifest itself in lots of different ways. One of the more subtle ways is we'll say something to someone and express our truth to someone, and it's totally authentic in the moment. and we think they may have been triggered, and so we'll say something as benign as, oh, I don't know where that came from. And so we try to, we try to get out of the responsibility of what we meant in that moment. And it's totally normal. It's totally normal. It's okay. Just be aware of it. And just notice when you do it. There's an opportunity for you to explore, because that's a classic example of separation. You're separating yourself from your truth in order to keep safe. It's the same reason we dissociate from experiences. It's the same reason we dissociate from our truth, same reason we dissociate from our thoughts, our feelings, because of the potential impact of expressing the truth of those things. So don't beat yourself up for being inauthentic. Don't beat yourself up for withholding your truth at times, but go into it with understanding of yourself and your nature, that it was necessary in that moment. But I do recognize this is an opportunity to reveal and understand a deeper truth within myself that in time will bring me into a state where because of my changed perspective, I don't perceive there to be a threat by sharing my truth now. Just be easy with yourself, allow your nature to arise, and then seek to understand it. Okay, that's all. This is the nature of self-abandonment, and it's totally okay to self-abandon. And the one last thing, maybe there could be another 10, who knows? But one last thing is, if you're going through life and you're noticing that lots of people are abandoning you, like physically abandoning you, you may have abandonment trauma, or you may have a fear of people abandoning you. You're always trying to get people to commit to you verbally. You don't trust that they're going to stay with you. Then just know that the key to breaking that pattern and that cycle lies within understanding your truth, your desires, what you want, what your perspectives are, validating them, interpreting them yourself, and backing that interpretation, claiming it, that this is my truth now. No matter how crazy or weird or dumb it may seem to anyone else, this is my perspective now. And slowly but surely, that pattern of being abandoned by other people and the fear that you hold around that will begin to dissolve. And in time you'll begin to see the correlation and the link between self-abandonment and the universe mirroring to you being abandoned. Okay, that's all for now. I'll catch you soon. Cheers.